Put your hands where I can see them.
Sorry, but following a lady's lead just isn't my style.
I've been wanting to make a video like this for a long time, and in the past I kinda made one. More so as a joke, pointing fun at the normies for praising literal subpar mediocrity that is released now. Somewhat in-depth analysis of what I hate most about modern gaming. I have a pretty long list, so I do hope you stay and listen. That said, make sure to grab your popcorn and blankie, cause this is gonna be a long video.
Leon. Long time no see.
I'm gonna sound like a boomer this entire video, but I feel like I have to in order to get my points across. Video games have never been in a worse state than they are right now. Games are taking longer to release, and when they do, the games are typically unfinished, completely broken, buggy, or just unplayable. Tell me how you spend years developing a game just for it to release, and it's not even a complete product. It's half-baked. We've seen this with so many games in recent years. That's pretty bad. Cyberpunk, for example, was a buggy, unfinished mess. I can't believe people actually gave CD Projekt Red a second chance. Battlefield 2042 is another buggy mess, and Halo Infinite as well. Well, not buggy, just a flat out bad game. The maps in Infinite were awful, the cosmetics were all bad, the battle pass wasn't even worth buying, and maybe this is just an issue I had with the game, or really just Halo in general, is the time to kill is way too long, which is something I've always complained about when it comes to Halo, because if the time to kill was low, the game would be so much more enjoyable. But continuing on, they literally did nothing to keep the players playing the game. It's kind of sad because I actually enjoyed Halo Infinite, but once the game was fixed, no one cared about it anymore. I still think Infinite is an overhated game, and to be fair, it's free to play, so chill out, they didn't rob you. But setting that aside, games then felt like people making them actually played them and enjoyed them. Now it's just soulless, average, copy-paste garbage every year, and people said 2023 was one of the best years for gaming. In what world could that possibly be true? I don't know. The best games have already been made. Gaming peaked back in the 360 and PS3 generation, back when it felt like games were made for people who actually played video games, and not the normies who come in to ruin a hobby and leave once they've had their fun. And that's what I feel like we're at right now. The era of the normie gamer. Most games are just catered to the largest audience possible because of sales. Money is the only driving motivation to make games, as that's always been the case, but even more now than then. So money driven that quality of games is thrown out the window. And boy, do I have some great examples for you. I'm not gonna go too in depth because I still want to talk about these franchises later on, but I'll give a little detail on what I mean. Pokemon. Now I'm gonna be extremely biased against this series because I've always hated Pokemon ever since I was a kid. Thought it was for kids who rode the short bus. That's me putting it nicely. Since I'm not a Pokemon fan, it's clear I don't know much about the series, but that doesn't mean I know nothing. The Pokemon games, according to most fans, have gone down in quality drastically and does not have the same feel as the old games. Nothing more than a soulless cash grab like most games that come out now. And speaking of soulless cash grabs, we have Assassin's Creed. I'm not gonna go too deep on this one either because I'm dedicating an entire portion of this video strictly to the downfall of what used to be my favorite video game franchise of all time. That said, Assassin's Creed used to be one of those games where you felt unstoppable and you were an assassin. Now it's just become something it's not, and I hate everything about it. I'll save the rest for later, but for now we move on to something I have a very strong take on. Now when it comes to graphics, I care a lot about how well a game looks. That is a huge deciding factor on whether or not I even play a game. For example, a game can have really good gameplay and be an all-around great game, but if it looks dated, I'm not going to enjoy the game nearly as much as a game that is great in both graphics as well as gameplay. When I play a game, I look for not only amazing gameplay, but also beautiful graphics. So where do I stand as far as art style? For me, graphics matter just as much as the art style. I'm sick of people saying graphics graphics don't matter, but it most definitely plays a huge part in the game itself. You have to stare at a screen in order to play, and if you don't like what you're looking at, then why would you keep playing? Every time someone brings this point up, I consider homicide, and I always hear people say this: not every game needs to be realistic, man. Why do you want every game to look like real life? First off, I never said that. Open your ears, Helen Keller. When I say I want a game to have good graphics, that does not mean I want the game to look realistic. It means I want the game to look good visually, and there's nothing wrong with the game having a realistic art style. The type of people that say this can't distinguish the difference between graphics and art style. Sure, not every game should look realistic, but what's the problem with a game looking real? I guess every game should look like Fortnite. Such a stupid argument. And don't get me wrong, having a unique art style can help preserve games and make them age well. Games like Borderlands 2, Wind Waker, and Bioshock. I may not like all of those games, but they all aged well because of their unique art styles. But because I have standards, I prefer the full package when it comes to playing the game. Graphics are just as important as the art style and the gameplay. I have no idea how this is even a debate.
Of all the money that I had, I spent it in good company, and all the harm that I've done, alas, it was to none but me. And all I've done, for want of wit, to memory now I can't recall. So fell to me the parting glass. Good night and joy be with you all.
Back when video games were good, you beat a hard section of a game, and after, you would be rewarded with the cutscene. Almost like the devs saying, thanks for playing our game, here's a little something for you for beating this part. Now it's the exact opposite. Most games are so bloated with cutscenes I question whether or not they were meant to be games in the first place. I really wonder if all the people working on the story in these games even like video games, or just stuck making games because they couldn't make it to Hollywood. Games just have an unnecessary amount of cutscenes in them now, and it's all in the name of drawing out the games as much as possible. Yes, I'm looking at you, PlayStation, most notorious for their cutscenes. Not because they're good, but because they are extremely long. This is why people say PlayStation games are movie games, because they are. God of War Ragnarok has 15 hours of cutscenes. 15 hours. They spent more time making cutscenes than making a good game. Another example of this is a game that came out just last year, Final Fantasy 16. Go ahead and take a guess on how many hours of cutscenes there are. Go ahead. Okay, got a number? 20 hours. 20 hours of needless cutscenes. Not gameplay, cutscene. This is ridiculous, and it's just gonna keep getting worse because the people playing these games don't like video games, they like movies. Games are not made for gamers anymore, and this proves it. This just might be the biggest reason video games are complete garbage nowadays. Nobody, and I mean nobody knows what a good game is anymore. Every time a game comes out now, it's a masterpiece. Greatest game of all time. Flawless beyond all imagination. Like, there are so many so-called reviewers who review games and just shill for the soulless shovelware we get so often. I genuinely believe most reviewers don't like video games and play the game for maybe 2 hours and say, yeah, this game is incredible, absolute perfection, 10 out of 10. Why should I even trust your judgment? You didn't even beat the game or put enough time into it for me to even take you serious. seriously. Even the people who claim to like video games have no standards and will say anything is good because they're all bots and listen to the popular opinion. A great example of this is when Baldur's Gate 3 came out. Apparently there were over 800,000 people playing this game on Steam at its peak, which I find very suspicious because I doubt there's actually that many people hyped for this woke garbage in the first place. More turn-based laziness wrapped up into the form of a video game that got endless praise for some reason, even though it's just a basic turn-based RPG with a dash of rainbow sprinkles layered on top. I mean, I don't understand how these people function. Mediocre games are the new masterpieces. And speaking of mediocre games, let's talk about Elden Ring. And I have a lot to say about this game, but I don't want this video to be 2 hours long. Elden Ring is the perfect example of hive mind consumer base. When Elden Ring came out, all the FromSoft drill pan users found yet another game to roll around in for the next 200 hours. Like, I swear to God, these people aren't real. The amount of problems with this game players refuse to mention is just pathetic and confirms that gaming is racing to the bottom with the lack of variety or creativity. Reused boss fights, unnecessary open world, dated graphics, story that barely exists, and reused combat. Need I say more? What a joke. And this is the same game that won Game of the Year, and everyone already knows how much of a joke that is. Gaming hit its peak so long ago, I don't see another golden age for gaming coming anytime soon. Then you have the fanboys shilling for just barely an average game, saying 10 out of 10, masterpiece. Like, go play a good game, then come back to me. This happened with Spider-Man 2, Tears of the Kingdom, God of War Ragnarok, Starfield, Hi-Fi Rush, just to name a few. That is what modern gaming has become. And these smooth-brained fanboys simping for these big companies are just as guilty as the incompetent developers making boring, recycled, unfinished movie game, woke nostalgia bait, lazy jank. I don't remember the last time I've gotten really excited for a game. I just don't anymore because I know I'm gonna be disappointed. And I wish everyone else would stop getting hype as well, because we're just gonna keep getting the same low quality games. How is it this hard to comprehend? Stop shilling for garbage and maybe we'll start getting some good games again. Until then, I hope you're happy with what's been coming out, because it's not gonna get any better. There's no reason for developers to put any real effort into making truly great games because of you retards constantly praising games for doing the most basic thing, like not having a mini-map. Like, wow, now I have to pause the game to see my map. Very intuitive. These man-children are killing gaming, and the developers that actually make good games are gonna copy their previous format instead of trying to make something new. Because it worked before, let's just do the same thing again. Why? Because fanboys love playing the same games over and over again. So let's keep making the same game, and no one will even care or call us out on a repetitive cycle of basically releasing the same game and charging full price. I feel like I've been rambling, so I'm just gonna end this segment with this final statement. Don't expect better games if you don't have the balls to give real criticism. The real problem with these fanboys is they don't like when people trash their favorite thing and expect everyone to think exactly like they do. They're a huge reason games like God of War Ragnarok, Final Cutscene 16, and Spider-Man 2 and Starflop exist. If you've been watching my videos for a while, then this shouldn't surprise you. Nintendo is one of those companies that can get away with just about anything. Bad hardware? Who cares? Who cares about hardware? That doesn't matter. It's the games. That's all that matters. Oh really? Then why is it people want the Switch 2 so bad? Oh, that's right, because the Switch runs games horribly. And don't give me the excuse that the Switch being underpowered doesn't matter. They know their hardware is an overpriced paperweight, yet Nintendo refuses to optimize their games to ensure they actually run properly. I'm sick of these Nintendo fanboys finding any reason to white knight for this billion-dollar corporation that does nothing but overcharge for everything they sell and release very average games. I really don't understand how Nintendo fans are happy with the games they get. Not what I would call good, but most Nintendo fans are closeted pedophiles, so I'm not exactly shocked. The biggest problem I have with Nintendo is that their games aren't good. Animal Crossing has a 90 on Metacritic, and it's a chore simulator. How? And that game is $60. It's like $30 at the most. Only Nintendo can get away with doing this. Nintendo can port a game to the Switch that came out over 10 years ago and charge full price, and then Nintendrons buy it. You morons are the problem. Stop buying these games. None of Nintendo's games are worth what they charge. It's a bunch of indie level trash. Nintendo just inflates the price because they know people will buy it regardless. And that's not all. These angels charge you to cloud save. So if you want to carry over your progress in another device, cough up some money. To be fair, it's not a lot, but this is Nintendo we're talking about. Their online services are so bad, it should be free. PlayStation and Xbox don't even charge for cloud saving. Nintendo really is just a bunch of greedy bastards. There's nothing you can say that can convince me Nintendo is a good company. They just aren't. The Switch is the same price as the Series S, and the Series S is better in every way. I've said this so many times, and I will keep saying it. Nintendo just needs to stop making hardware. It's awful. The only reason people even buy their underpowered consoles is because they like their overpriced indie slop. If Nintendo released all of their games into every other platform, there'd be no reason to buy another Nintendo console, because what sane person wants to play on bad hardware? I prefer a solid 60 FPS at the very least. Anything below that at this point is almost unplayable. I still have no idea how people unironically defend the Switch when they themselves know it suffers from being a cheap tablet that can run mobile games. My phone is more powerful than the Switch, so the excuse that it's a handheld is not an excuse. You're just coping. Nintendo has one good console, and that's the GameCube. Everything else can be left in the junkyard. Juggernaut in the gaming industry, even after having become watered down normie bait. Assassin's Creed used to be my favorite video game franchise of all time. This is back when I actually cared about the stories in games. Didn't skip all the padding known as cutscenes. It felt like a genuine story was trying to be told, and now I couldn't even explain what's going on in this plot at this point. The gameplay of Assassin's Creed was one of those one-man army type of games, where you basically were invincible and anyone you fought was dying the minute they attacked. It's sad to see we don't get power fantasy games anymore, and that's one reason I loved Assassin's Creed so much. The games were made to be fun and not drawn out to make you play the game as long as possible. So many games try their hardest to extend the story as much as possible, and I don't know why. Like all the talent left, and we were left with the special ed developers to make the next generation of games. The last Assassin's Creed game I played was Valhalla, and I played it for maybe 3 hours before I got bored and refunded the game. I bought it on sale and still felt ripped off. Assassin's Creed stopped being about assassins versus Templars. I almost want to say Black Flag because you don't really play as an assassin till the end of the game, but Black Flag is still one of the best AC games because it was still a very fun game. It told a great story, at least in the animus. But everything after that is when the series started to fall apart. I played Unity for the first time about 2 years ago at this point, and my thoughts in the game at the time were pretty negative. I didn't like the changes to the combat. It felt like it was becoming a Dark Souls rolling simulator, and I didn't like the story. It was boring. I almost ended up liking Arno, but near the middle of the game he just became unbearable, and I was praying for his downfall. Kind of became a crybaby at the end, and at that point I didn't care what happened so long as he suffered. But after giving the game another chance, it's not as bad as I remember. Sure, you can't chain kill, but the climbing in the game is by far the best. The way you can slide down buildings is pretty cool, not gonna lie. I wish more games did stuff like that, and the climbing felt smoother as well. I love the movement in Unity. The thing I hated most about Unity is the main character, which is one massive part of why I hate Assassin's Creed and most modern games now. There hasn't been a good main character in an Assassin's Creed game since Black Flag. They tried to recapture the same charm of Ezio as Arno, but it's just not the same. Edward Kenway is easily the second best MC in the Assassin's Creed series. Why? Because they give you a reason to care about his character, and he's just a well-written character all around. Why can't we get good characters anymore? Good character development and good plot lines. Ezio is a perfect example all around. We know his motivations and why he's doing what he's doing, where he came from, his background, and as you play through the games, you can feel a sense of progression with the feel of the combat, which I thought was actually pretty cool. In ACT, you pretty much have to learn everything and become an assassin. In Brotherhood, everything you learned in AC2 has been mastered, and you're a killing machine. Same goes with Revelation. You actually grow with the character throughout each game, and that's what I love so much about the Ezio trilogy. You get an all-around smart, charismatic, cool, and likable character. We don't get that anymore, especially with the new Assassin's Creed game. One last thing I want to mention about the Ezio trilogy that I never hear people talk about is the scar that Ezio gets in Assassin's Creed 2 is shared with Desmond. If you look closely at Desmond's face in AC2 and Brotherhood, you can see the same scar Ezio gets in his fight at the beginning of AC2. I like the connection they make through the designs of each character, and I brought that up because I thought it was something cool and typically overlooked. At least I feel like it is. And Assassin's Creed Odyssey is my least favorite Assassin's Creed game because of the exact opposite of everything I just mentioned. mentioned. The gameplay in Odyssey has RPG-like combat. It's a complete change from what we're used to, and I could never understand the change. Enemies have too much health, and because it's an RPG, enemy levels are a thing. This is not Assassin's Creed at all. I wouldn't have hated this game nearly as much if it were called anything else. I almost forgot to mention, yeah, you don't even play as an assassin anymore. In Assassin's Creed, like, who made this game? It's like they were desperate to write a hate letter to true fans of the series. I could probably go on for hours talking about this disappointment. I used to hold these games close, but now I don't care what happens to this franchise anymore. Ubisoft lied with Mirage, claiming to go back to the roots, but what do you know? They didn't. It still has the RPG lightness to it, and I hate it. The world looks AI generated, and story is awful. The main character might as well just be a silent protagonist at this point, because who actually cares? I still have so many things I want to touch on, but this video will become an autistic, overly detailed analysis of a dead franchise. Someone tell me how the most popular IP in the world has some of the most lazy, uncreative, I don't know if that's a word, games to ever release. Game Freak should be embarrassed by how bad the games are that they put out. I've said this once already, but I'll say it again. I do not like Pokemon. I think it's gay, furry, pedo bait. The fact that people still buy these very clearly cash grab games is why we get games like Pokemon Arceus. An unfinished, ugly, lazy embarrassment. I've seen people defend that game like World of Warcraft is more visually impressive than that game, and it came out in 2004. I'm telling you, these Pokemon fanboys are the ones shilling for bad games and writing it off as they didn't have enough time, which is complete cope. The Pokemon games do not take an entire year to make. They forced out 2 Pokemon games that same year and then released another game shortly after. So I don't want to hear any justifications for why the games are so bad. When this isn't the first time Game Freak's made a bad game, why do they sell me 2 versions of the exact same game? And these games are $60 for Pokemon. Like, no, the Pokemon games are literally indie games. Anything more than $20 is not even worth the money. You have some of the laziest game developers on the face of the planet making this recycled nostalgia bait, and people are saying they don't have enough time. All they do is reuse assets from previous games. What do you mean they don't have enough time? We aren't talking about huge games either. Pokemon games on average are about 5 to 8 gigabytes. That's nothing. Stop making excuses for game developers. Demand better, you Pokemon fanboys. Then the Pokemon games all look horrible graphically. They do, every single one of them. And why do people just accept this? Don't you want a pretty looking game? Remember Scarlet? That game looks terrible. Game Freak actually had the balls to drop that game and ask for your money. You idiots actually paid for it. Laziness is literally glorified now. Absolutely pathetic. Pokemon fans deserve garbage, since that seems to be what they like. Try to stay as far away from politics as possible for several reasons. One being I just don't care, and video games used to be a way to escape from reality for a little bit and temporarily dismiss your responsibilities and just relax. Now games force inclusion, diversity, gender, feminism, and a whole lot more political talking points into games. This wouldn't be a big deal if it were subtle, but subtlety is dead. Gone are the times of writers being talented and incorporating a message without shouting it in my face. Gaming has to appeal to everyone now, because no one should feel left out. Does anyone else see what's wrong with that? You're putting actual fans of this hobby on the back burner, and people who don't really care are being put in the front row, causing people who actually play video games and find them entertaining to turn away and find something new. This brings me to my first example. When Hogwarts Legacy was about to come out, the Troon Squad were in their feelings because J.K. Rowling said, and I quote, "People who menstruate." I'm sure there used to be a word for those people. Someone help me out. Implying that women aren't even being referred to as women anymore, which is very sexist if I do say so myself. I mean, come on, people who menstruate, really? This is what the world has come to? Troons got so angry with her they started calling anyone transphobic who bought the game. Thankfully the game did well and didn't lose the studio money, because a bunch of angry Twitter users were up in arms over a tweet J.K. Rowling made about some article referring to women as basically nothing. That apart from my last, never really saw any outrage, but it's definitely woke. Tiny Tina's Wonderlands. The game overall was pretty pretty fun. The main problem is the endgame and DLC, but that's besides the point. Throughout my playtime, I noticed few things that would be considered woke. Like for one, the rainbows, which I guess you can make a case for, since it's a bright and colorful game. There's a trans female character in the game, Mike, who is voiced by a trans female as well. In the customization screen, there's an option to choose your gender, being this one or that one. Not male or female, can't have that. And you can choose your pronouns, because that's what every game needs. You know, instead of making actual content for your game, add more pronouns, because that's what matters most. Inclusivity, not fun. That's silly. Oh, and they literally made Brick a fairy. I wish I was joking. Way to emasculate him. Good job, Gearbox. If you pick this game up, buy it on sale. I made the mistake of pre-ordering it. Never again. Anyone saying this game isn't woke is inhaling the copium. There's a reason for everything, just as there's a reason games have become woke. And that's no thanks to Sweet Baby Inc.
So Sweet Baby begins with kind of our vision and our mission. We are a fully self-funded narrative consulting company and narrative development company, and our goal overall is to tell better stories. We want to make stories in games better. We want to tell them better. We want to help teams understand, you know, the complexities of narrative design and how they can tell better stories. And we also want to make them more innovative, more inclusive as kind of part of that.
I'll probably just shadow ban myself for saying that name, but more people need to talk about them. If you don't know what Sweet Baby is, here's a direct quote explaining what they do. Founded in 2018, Sweet Baby Inc. is a narrative development consultation studio based in Montreal and working around the globe. Our mission is to tell better, more empathetic series while diversifying and enriching the video games industry. We aim to make games more engaging, more fun, more meaningful, and more inclusive for everyone. In other words, they are trying to ruin video games and add diversity and inclusion where it isn't needed. Here's a list of familiar games they have collaborated on: Spider-Man 2, God of War Ragnarok, Alan Wake 2, Suicide Squad. Two of those games in that list you probably played, and Suicide Squad isn't out yet, but I'm sure that will be a treat. Here's some of the studios they worked with: Xbox, Ubisoft, EA, Valve, Warner Bros, Santa Monica Studios, Square Enix, 2K, and Remedy. That's quite a bit, and I didn't even name all of them. There's still more. People actually said Spider-Man 2 wasn't woke. Then why is it on their website? Please explain. The gaming industry has been infiltrated by the politically obsessed zombies and are being controlled by globalists who want to brainwash the masses into becoming their subservient slaves. Maybe that's a stretch, but I wouldn't completely cross it out. The way the world has become, this may have been a plan all along. String us along with really good games, then make trash, in hopes that we all mindlessly consume it, and through time deliver political messaging straight to our faces, while also placing it in the background without us noticing, tricking our brain into believing a certain thing is right and another is left. I don't have much to say about this. I don't mind microtransactions in games, so long as they are strictly multiplayer games and aren't pay to win. Other than that, I don't really care. Redditors can get angry all they want. It's really not that serious. They've always existed in games, so I don't know why people are acting like this is something that magically appeared 4 years ago. I don't know how having the option to buy cosmetics ruins a game for you. Stupidity will never cease to exist. If you don't like it, don't buy it. You'll think that's simple to understand, yet you have grown men saying cash outs manipulate you into spending money. If you're an adult and you're being manipulated into spending money on a video game, it's not the game's fault, it's yours. Stop being a degenerate consumer and learn how to control your spending habits instead of blaming companies for trying to make money. Don't have high hopes for the gaming industry. Games all feel soulless now. No real passion is left for the hobby. Everyone making games is either trying to push an agenda or just aren't talented. Gaming is at an all-time low. It might be more popular than ever, and that's cool and all, but does it really matter if you don't get to share fun games with other people? Gaming over the past few years has become less and less interesting, and I thought it was because I was getting older, but no. I was just bored of the games we've been getting. Nothing holds my attention anymore. I'm constantly trying to find new games that I can find myself playing for days, weeks, even months. I just can't with modern games. I've had more fun playing older titles such as Borderlands 2, God of War 2, Jak and Daxter, Takeed and Kiwami. Fun games. Games don't even feel like they're trying to be funny anymore. It's just MMO side quests for missions a lot of the time, and games relying on cutscenes and walking. That is supposed to be gameplay? Are you serious? If the gaming industry continues to go down this route, normies might actually start noticing and calling this gameplay boring. I hate to be a doomer, but if I don't, who will? Gaming sucks now. Waiting years for one game just to be disappointed. And speaking of waiting, why are games taking so much longer to come out nowadays? Some of the greatest games ever made were made in like 1 to 2 years at the most. Now it takes 5 to 10 years to make a single game. Rockstar, I'm looking at you. It makes no sense when you have thousands of people working to create this one product. It should not take this long. Xbox is the perfect example for this. What are they doing? They just don't release games. Does anyone even work at the Xbox gaming division? It seems like the devs are just twiddling their fingers instead of working. And you expect me to feel bad for these untalented diversity hires for getting fired? You didn't even earn your place at the company. None of you did. It's so infuriating because I know what a good game is. I've played plenty, and it's sad to see Xbox in this state. I really hate to say this, but it might be the end for Xbox. People just don't care about Xbox anymore. Their games are not good. Starfield was terrible. Who actually played Hi-Fi Rush? And Redfall was just a Back 4 Blood clone. I hate fanboys as much as the next guy, but how can you even be an Xbox fanboy? There's nothing to fanboy over. The only thing Xbox cares about at this point is Game Pass. How about making some games that pass? Incompetency is their biggest weakness. I'm so done with gaming at this point. I really hope this year has some good games, because 2023 was a wake-up call. I have my eyes set on Dragon's Dogma 2, Sparking Zero, and Path of the Goddess. I'm not even gonna bother to get my hopes up. I just hope at least one of those games are good. But that's enough for me. I need to wrap this up. Gaming used to be for those who played video games. Not so much anymore. There's no passion left in the video game industry, which is why I don't see a bright future ahead. Gaming is dying, and it's your fault.